Welcome to the Business of Pharmacy podcast, where we explore the business of pharmacy through candid, in-depth conversations with the industry's top leaders. Every Monday, tune in for insights and stories you won't find anywhere else. I'm your host, Mike Kelzer. If you're a pharmacy owner tired of PBMs and insurers eating into your profits, or frustrated by unpaid Medicare advice benefits, explore Waypoint Rx's health and wealthcare revolution. Their Pharmacy of Tomorrow model includes owning a Medicare insurance agency right in your pharmacy, owning a direct primary care clinic right in your own pharmacy, and offering a pharmacy 401k benefits program for retention, and joining the Prosper Rx community for wisdom sharing. Waypoint Rx is dedicated to boosting the success of independent pharmacies, believing that thriving local pharmacies vitalize communities. Discover how to leverage your influence and transform your pharmacy's future at waypointrx.com. Join today and build your pharmacy of tomorrow. Ezriel, for those who haven't come across you online, introduce yourself and tell our listeners what we're talking about today.
I'm Ezriel Green. I'm the founder and CEO of EzriRx.com. We're a technology company for pharmacies, and we do a multitude of things, but primarily we're in the business of saving pharmacies time and money. In the general world, you have AI, you have cryptocurrency, you have so many little new technologies that have been making life better behind the scenes for people. And yet when you go back to the pharma industry, the business of pharmacy is still booming, but not in the really simplistic ways of doing things sector. So we are in that space of trying to make life for pharmacies much easier by saving them time and money.
Ezriel, when I look at your either marketing or when I see your company pop up, one thing that comes to mind more is product. I'm seeing capsules and things like that. Is that a good thing for me to think of you that way, or is that too small, that your company would rather be thought of as a broader technology and the product is part of that? Is that taboo on my part?
So you're asking a pretty good question. It's actually not taboo. We started with the capsule concept. The general core of the business was that there are many wholesalers scattered all across the US, and these are secondary wholesalers that sells pills, capsules, tabs, and there are 25,000 pharmacies. The traditional marketing methods of these drug wholesalers was that they would sit and call on pharmacies all day. They would send them emails and they would try to get the business from them. Now, we try to create a simple process where pharmacies can come online, they can search for now over 70,000 different products, find the best deal from these 30 different wholesalers, and purchase them for the cheapest and best price possible. That was the initial thing of what we did. Once we started developing this process, we started noticing is that there are so many simple things that could happen behind the scenes, which will make life a lot easier for pharmacies that could really make life a lot easier. Things like filling out customer applications. Purchasing from 30 different wholesalers means that you have to spend time filling out 30 individual wholesale applications. We're like, wait, there's e-signature out there. Let's just make it super simple. Then it came the next step is that when pharmacies have to pay for purchases, if they're buying from 30 different drug wholesalers, they have to sign 30 different checks every month. They have to get 30 different invoices. They have to get 300 different packing slips. And we were like, wait, these days you have Amazon, which you have the ability to pay for a whole bunch of different, like orders super simplistically. So why can't we bring that technology back there? Then we went one step further, is that we know that when you can call a wholesaler, you could try to get a better price. We were like, wait, eBay's best offer feature has the ability to make an offer on a product and get a better price. Why can we bring the same thing there? So we started with this initial idea of, capsules and how to get the best price for pills to the pharmacy. And then we just took that idea and just pushed it beyond to try to give pharmacies the easiest way of shopping and saving them enormous amount of time.
When I think of Amazon still, and you listen to Bezos talking about his vision and so on, the average consumer buys from there, good product choice. Why wouldn't I go to Amazon? The more elite consumer, and maybe someone who runs a business, knows that they're spending all kinds of time with the one button order, and should it go from left to right or right to left? And when you do this, should it be 2 buttons or 1 button, that kind of thing. So they're a really good computer company that sells products, but the average person kind of sees products coming out of there and doesn't realize the immense thought that goes behind why you're really on there versus somebody else.
That's actually a very interesting point. There's a lot of user experience and user interface thought that goes into every step of and process when building a web company. And you're 100% correct, is that most people don't realize is that Amazon spent enormous amount of time A/B and split testing every button, every color, every single little word that they place on a site, how it's going to convert. And they test it amongst millions of users every single day. And sometimes you could be in California and you see a new feature pop up, and that same feature is not going to be in New York simply because they're testing it with a certain user base and then they roll it out to everyone in the country. We did the same thing. We basically started off with a pretty basic design, pretty basic function. And then we started testing. We said, okay, if we switch this header and basically change it this way, is it going to make life easier for pharmacies? And is it going to make the process easier for pharmacies to search and buy? So, and like a very simple thing that we did is that when you're searching for products, you have the ability to search for NDC. You have the ability to search for form, dose, strength, pack size. And like most pharmacies are used to basically putting in LIDO 3544, a comma, whatever it is. We basically had is that if you put in LIDO, every single possible strength just comes up right away for you. And then it starts learning is that, wait, what is this pharmacy searching for frequently? And how do we make those results come up faster to them so that we can cache those results and therefore not have the ability to rerun every single search function again and again. So the searching ability is super simple with us versus other platforms that exist out there.
I picture your stuff, and mine on a miniature scale. It kind of makes me think sometimes I want to tell the listener, like I want to market my podcast as the length is always going to be roughly the same. I'm not coming out with a 5-minute one and an hour one. The sound is always going to be good with no echo. I'm going to get to the point of the show within a minute. I cut out stories that don't go anywhere. I don't start off the podcast asking somebody where they went to grade school on up through pharmacy school, that kind of thing. And I kind of want to sometimes shout that out, but I realize that what I think is cool on my side, why I know I'm maybe picking up some listeners, maybe wouldn't go over too well on people. They don't even really think about the things and maybe don't even care, but it's maybe raising subconsciously. They might see my show over somebody else and just have that feeling of something is there, but I can't really tell them it's there. And your stuff too. Sometimes the consumer may not even know why they want to go to EzriRx, some other program. You just have to trust that what you're doing is fruitful for the subconscious.
There's this great book by Professor Adam Grant, who's a psychologist for like businesses. And he has this book called Think Again. And Think Again basically says is that you constantly have to take everything that you know for certain, the facts that you know for certain, and rethink them. You have to be a scientist in that matter. And not only do we tell it to ourselves, we hope that pharmacies do the exact same thing as well, is that while we built it, and then we went back and we went back and we went back and reiterated and made it better and better. Our goal is to have the same thing done for pharmacies, is that we also try to tell them is that you know your business. You know that you currently have your like GCR spend that you have to stay within. And what like we try to do is that we try to take that model and essentially say, wait, that model only exists in the RX industry. It doesn't exist anywhere else. You don't have Amazon telling you is that you have to buy from one source and we're going to dictate what spend you could do outside of Amazon. There's a free market over there that happens. And you're not capped with how much someone's going to charge for a product and how much you're going to get paid for the product. You can buy it for $1, sell it for $1 if you like, or sell it for $10 if you like. The RX industry is the only place where that happens. So like that mindset of how we innovate, we try to pass on to the pharmacies that, hey guys, we understand that you're going through one of the most tumultuous times in the industry where you're getting hit with negative reimbursements, you're getting hit with the DIR fees, you have the DIR fee apocalypse, you have so many issues that are happening to you. Now's the time where you got to do two things. You got to rethink the same way we constantly rethink, try to bring that back into your business, rethink everything that's happening in your business. And second of all, start doubling down, not on your losses, start doubling down on your winnings. Just going back to the Amazon analogy, is that Amazon has the returns business, for example. And we all know that they're super easy with their returns business and they'll just take it back. But you never see Amazon focusing on it. What they'll do is that all they do is they take all the returns, they'll put it onto a pallet and they'll sell it by weight. And why? Because Amazon is now focused on their winnings. And they go back and they start doubling down is that where we're making money. That's AWS. That's on the Prime memberships. That's on the stuff that are actually making them money. And that's where they focus. And that's something which we try to have like those two thoughts up and say, okay, we're going to try to innovate as best as we can. And we're essentially going to try to do the same thing and have you do the same thing. And have you do also is that try to find those nuggets that are earning you money and see how that could turn into more profit for you.
Our listeners have heard me complain about this, but I take somebody like McDonald's who been around forever, billions and billions served. And I don't discredit them for this of making new products and doing different things and that. But then I went into a McDonald's, this is years ago, and I went and I stood at the counter for 20 seconds. No one said hello. I waited another 20 seconds. Nobody says hello. I'm just there to get a damn cup of coffee. And in my head is thinking of all these the drive-through things and the push button, all this kind of stuff and all their marketing and all that. In the meantime, I'm not being served their bread and butter. I'm going up and I want a fast food cup of coffee and it's not coming my way. So I think some companies, as you're saying, they make something and they go on to the next thing. It may even not be a money maker, but they got the entrepreneurial spirit and they want a challenge and all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, their bread and butter is suffering for the next company that comes along and says, we're focusing just on that.
There's actually one other very interesting thing. I actually heard Jeff Bezos speaking about this, is that he said that he set a KPI in his business unit that customer support has to be answered within a minute or something like that. So they had a 60-second bar for how quickly customer support messages have to be answered. And he said that suddenly he started coming from outside of feedback and started hearing is that, wait, customer service is lagging and it's taking longer and customers are on hold for 7 minutes. And he brought it back to his weekly meeting and basically said, hey guys, we're getting complaints on the customer support side is that people are not answering their phones for 7-8 minutes. But he says that our reporting is telling us that it's working fine. What is happening here? And what he did is that he sat in the board meeting, he picked up a phone and he said, I'm calling the main Amazon phone number. And he realizes that it was actually 8 minutes of him waiting online. And he was like, wait, there's a disconnect over here. Is that we thought that what we did was correct in the first place. And we set even a KPI for it, but we never went down to double check that KPI and see if what we did was correct in the first place. He went back and reset the entire process and he got it back down to under 60 seconds of answer time. But that's just that's a way of thinking. But the same thing in our business too, is that I think that every pharmacy has to do this, is that you have to sit down once every 30 days. And you have to basically go through different business strategies or structures. You have to take a look at your own business. And instead of working in the business, you start working on the business. Work on the business. Think about, okay, I'm going to take a investor's view of this business. And I'm going to start taking a look at, okay, how many new scripts should I be processing? How many refills did I take care of today? How do I do better? Where's my profit coming from? Where are my losses coming from? So instead of one basic example of how a pharmacy could simply innovate, that's not related to EzriRx at all, is that stop taking a look at profit per patient. Take a look at profits per family. And if you see that the entire family is losing you money, you should just basically just tell them to go to a chain and tell them to go to a larger chain. On the other hand, is that if you feel like one of your patients is losing you money, look at the family. And perhaps there's someone else in the family that's actually being fairly profitable, and then keep that patient. A lot of pharmacies are not doing that. Basically just taking a look at their list of customers. They're not doing the 80-20 rule and basically saying, okay, most of my money is coming from 20%. How can I take a look at my 80% and see what's happening and what I'm doing wrong? Let's take a look at that and see how we can innovate on that.
I have a cottage 30 miles away and there's an ice cream shop on the way. It might be a health food store. I think it's ice cream. But so I'm on the way up there and I see all these people standing in line. And in my head, I'm calculating, okay, it's so hot out. I know what time of day it is, and I see these people in line. Well, that's self-limiting. I'm not going to go stand in line. I'm going to drive on by. But then the owner, the next day, he's saying, oh, it was perfect. We got everybody their ice cream in time. The line only waited this long. We had this many sales and so on. But are they taking into account the people that went right by because they weren't being waited on quickly enough, or at least in their mind they weren't going to be, And I don't think you pick up on some of that stuff until you really do your homework on that to see if the KPIs are really indicating what reality is, because it's easy to lose track of reality, as you mentioned there about Amazon.
That's a really valid point. When it comes to pharmacy, the customers outside of the business versus in the business, or the people that are waiting online. I actually recently traveled to a different country, and I was trying to buy a train ticket to go from Kyoto to Tokyo. And one of the things that I noticed was that the line was just endless. It was just endless in order to speak to a customer service representative. And suddenly this person, one of the women who was working behind the counter, just came out and started going over to every person and saying, hey, what do you actually need? Do you need a new ticket? And just to translate that to pharmacies, do you need a refill? Are you looking at just simple advice? And start delegating super quickly is that, okay, you're going to wait for this person to help you. You're going to wait for this person to help you. Here's something simple I could just pull from the shelf and give to you. And here's something simple that I could do. And before she did that, everyone on the line was seriously frustrated. And I saw people dipping out of the line and basically saying is that I'm going to look for an alternative and see what I can do better. This one intuitive person came out and basically said, wait, this line is way too long. People are starting getting frustrated. How can I make things a lot faster and a lot simpler? Just to make that analogy, just go back to the EzriRx system, is something which we did is that we started noticing is that the time that it takes for a pharmacy to sign up to EzriRx and put in your NPI, your DEA, your PIC, who your primary is, the address, the phone number, your tax ID, your expiration dates for your licenses, was taking us literally 8 minutes, 9 minutes for someone to do. And we started asking ourselves is that how do we quicken the pace of every one of these steps? And what we got it down to, through technology actually, is that we got it down to under 2 minutes. Is that all of a pharmacy has to do in order to sign up to EzriRx is enter in their NCPDP number and their zip code, and we'll already have all the information pre-filled.
Why not?
And it takes you under 2 minutes to sign up. And then we innovated even further, and we started saying, okay, what's the next bottleneck that a pharmacy has to do? And we started saying, okay, there's 30 plus drug wholesalers listed on the site, and they have to fill out 30 different applications. And we said, okay, how do we simplify this process? And we started doing two different things. The first thing we did is that we took the same information that they used for the sign-up process, and we filled it out, and we basically filled those applications already with the information that we know already. And then we said is that every single one of the wholesalers has their own questionnaire that they want to ask you. So how do you make it simplified? Is I don't have to run through each and every single one and look for it. So what we did is that we took the original information which we had, and we asked them one time all the questions that every possible wholesaler could have, and we pre-filled all that information onto the applications, and all they got to do is scribble a signature and send it off to the wholesaler. And we basically iterated on the process. We saw, okay, what's the business bottleneck that we're having? How do we make it simpler for the pharmacy and the user that's actually using it? And then how do we innovate on those steps again and again? And we literally got it down. I'm pretty sure now is that it's 60 seconds from when the pharmacy comes on the site until after they have their licenses uploaded. And from that uploaded until they fill out the first application and they place the order usually within 30 minutes.
And the thing is, you don't know what's going to grab the customer. It's a subconscious mix. So you got me thinking now of, I shouldn't really be on this fast food topic, but when I'm sitting at McDonald's, now this is years ago, I don't do it as much anymore, but I'm at McDonald's and I'm thinking, I kind of want an apple pie or an ice cream. But I look at the line and there's 10 people in line, and I thought, why don't they do what the grocery stores do of either 10 items or less, but not that? What it would be is a dessert line. So you go up and you're in the dessert line and there's a special person there for desserts because they'd sell a lot more because I don't have to go through that full line again. Your point about making things easy, and there's this company that has this service and I'm interested in the service, but in order to use the service, I have to leave my email and get a price quote. And it's like, no, I sign up for enough SaaS programs and handheld things, and I want to see something. If you have 10 to 20 of this, it's this price, and 20 to 30. And it's like, why would you have to quote me, especially if you're a computer company? Why do you have to quote me something live? I know why, of course. It's all the things I don't want to do. I don't want the phone calls. I don't want them being nice to me and following up and all that stuff. I just don't want it. The easier, the better.
You're literally pointing in the exact direction of what the premise of EzriRx was initially. I literally walked into a pharmacy in 2016, and I saw this massive stack of papers on the counter. And I asked the pharmacist, I'm like, wait, what is this massive stack of papers that you have? And he picks one up and he's, well, this is a flyer for products. I looked at him and I'm like, what? I was like, the wholesalers are faxing you stuff? I was blown away. And I said, this makes no sense. I said, is there no simple way for you to search for the drugs online? And he basically tells me not that I know of. Turns out that there was systems and solutions out there for you to do a very quick price comparison. And I basically said, wait, what are these? I'm like, what's this big pack? You literally have 300 papers on your shoulder. He's like, yeah, well, this is the invoices from every wholesaler. And I was like, wait, every wholesaler is invoicing you for every purchase that you make? I was like, this is going to take you forever. You wanted to get a better price, so you went into the secondary market. And now all you did is you just cost yourself more time, so you're losing out on that again. And I was like, okay, this has to stop. And that's where we built in the online payments, is that you can literally come online onto EzriRx. You can add a credit card. You can add your bank account through ACH. And every wholesaler is going to allocate a line of credit to you on the site itself, so that you have the ability is that while you're purchasing, it moves from green to yellow to red, and it's going to take care of the payments for you automatically. 6 months after I did that, I woke back into the pharmacy shelf and I saw that the pile was actually cut in half. And I was like, that's where it is. I was like, that's the key of how I just made life simpler and how we just made life simpler for so many pharmacies out there in order to really save them time and money. So it's not just the price comparison. It's not the price comparison. It's by saving them the time that it takes in order to do the external processes, which are super cumbersome. If you help them do that, then they'll have time to deal with their patients. And it's literally going to be saving lives just by doing something really stupid on the front end. And that's how our wheels constantly get turning of how to make things better for pharmacies, is that we speak to them, we hear them, we see. And something which is really interesting is that there's a quote that they quote from Henry Ford. And it says is that if I would have asked people what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse. So when we asked pharmacies initially, is what do you want? Is what will make your life easier? And they basically said, well, we would love to have better pricing, but we would love help with our GCR. And we would love to help and somebody get a better rebate and and I was like, wait, you're going to try to get a better discount, but who says that those numbers make sense? Who says that you're not overspending on your generics in order to get a higher discount on your brands? Who said that the math will necessarily work out? Is that if you go from a 6% brand discount and you go down to 4%, who says that 2% is not going to be less in savings than the money that you could save by going elsewhere for your generics? And we've been able to prove it time and time again to pharmacies is that you need to take a hard look and you need to think again on your numbers. Are you sitting at the end of the month and overspending on your generics just to get a greater discount on your brands, but the math doesn't add up? And we've been able to show them so many times that it just doesn't. It doesn't. You're fighting for a higher brand discount when there's generic deflation. So essentially what's happening is you're overspending on your generics that you're not going to use, which is going to go to waste just for the illusion that the extra percentages that you're going to get on the back end is going to make you more money. And that's wrong.
It's just crazy. And you alluded to this, Ezriel. Let's just take some rough numbers. Let's say that a pharmacy is $5 million a year. Think if you went to a car dealership and you had $5 million and you were going to buy, let's say, $150,000 cars from a dealership. And think of going in there's a clown in there and they're saying, spin the wheel. And if you do this and fill out this many clip cards and we're going to get you a free CD. You would never think about that at those kind of numbers. That might be a number on a used car lot, one car every 5 years. But when you're buying 100 cars a year from somebody, why in the world would a company make you play those games? It just seems somebody can rise up above that. And I'm glad you're talking sense.
For some reason, when it comes to the pharmacy world, whoever created this was really smart of somehow telling pharmacies is that if you sign up to a GCR model and the more you spend on your generics, the higher the discount you're going to get on your brands. And we're going to lock you into a 90-10 contract where you're only allowed to spend 10% outside of your contract. Genius, and it's crazy at the same time. And pharmacies, unfortunately, have to subscribe to this model. And it doesn't afford them the freedom of being able to really shop smartly. And a lot of what we do is that basically tell these pharmacies is that, quite frankly, the only way to survive in the current market is if you shop secondary. I don't know if there's a single way for a pharmacy to survive these days strictly going to the primary model. It just doesn't work. We sometimes see pricing that on a primary contract, a certain NDC will cost you $100, and on the secondary market is going for 20. You can't tell me that there's any rebate that you're going to get, which is going to make sense for you to buy that from your primary versus the secondary. It makes no sense at all. And I don't care what contract you have, it's worth it for you to break it for that particular drug. Pharmacies are getting killed on the rebates. They really are. And there is no question, and it's terrible. It really is terrible. And now sometimes you could always say is that businesses need loss leaders. Loss leaders are only when you're doing it with an extremely small percentage.
Yeah, right.
When the largest percentage of your scripts are just being lost on, it makes no sense. And it's the only industry where someone is telling you, here's the max reimbursement that you could get for a certain drug. Since when can I buy something for $1 and sell it for $100? I technically should be able to. Here is that no, you have to buy it for $1 and only get paid 80 cents. We constantly try to tell pharmacies is that, yes, this industry is beating you up enough. Start looking elsewhere, because there are pharmacies that are focusing on the golden nuggets. They are focusing on the items that are making them profit. And just one example is like, what other prescriptions could a patient use based on the condition that they have, right? So like, how much more can I profit from an individual patient and get them to do the refill or get them to speak to the doctor and see if they can use another type of medication? And I spend 20 minutes a day doing that, a very simple task. And we see is that the pharmacies that are doing that are profiting a lot more than the other pharmacies. And those are the ones that are thriving and not only surviving. And like lots of what we try to tell the EzriRx pharmacies is that there is technology out there to let you find those golden nuggets and double down on them. And how do you make more money on those? And in conjunction with you working on seeing what other scripts this person can actually get, you tie that into a better cost of goods. And now you're going to start seeing yourself being profitable over and over. So similar to the Amazon analogy, don't just focus on the returns. Every business is going to have returns. And those are the stuff which we just have to just spend 10 minutes a day on. Just mostly go back to the stuff that you're super profitable on and double down on those. And just double down on those NDCs and try to find more patients for it. And try to find other NDCs that this particular patient can use and see how you can make more money from those.
Just for the record, and my listeners know this well, but I got out of the whole damn rat race about 5 years ago on the brand names. We just don't carry anymore. And I'd never signed a primary contract. I think they were just kind of getting more popular as ours was running out and so on. Here's the other one I would do, Ezriel, is my rep would come in the door and I'd get a big bottle of ibuprofen 800, the heaviest bottle I could find. And I'd set it down and shake the counter and I'd say, hey, so-and-so, tell me how much I paid for that. Thinking again about 100 cars at a car dealership and saying to them, how much did I pay for that car? And them not being able to say, well, here's what you paid for it, and my rep, they start stammering and stuttering and we don't really know yet because we don't know this and this. And it's a game I'm glad I'm out of.
Yes, we unfortunately know one too many pharmacies that are still stuck in that game. And some of them have to. And we fully understand is that some pharmacies are serving certain areas and certain demographics where you don't have the chains that you could just pony off the brands to and basically just go fill it elsewhere. Some of them have to take care of their patients and they are stuck with this needing to get a decent brand discount in order to service their customers. But we even show those pharmacies is that we'll show you how to get your brands not that cheap, but in the long run, it's going to be cheaper than you having to buy more generics just to get that discount. And that's where that difference happens when you're using a site like EzriRx in order to do your purchasing. We'll constantly innovate on the contracts you have and on the current methods of purchasing that you have. So just going back to your contract, there is a long-term care pharmacy, which we just started working with. And we literally show them how they can save $50,000 a month after the rebates, after the discounts, after the brands, everything, $50,000 a month. And we were like, that's a pretty decent savings a year that you can put towards something else in your pharmacy. And thankfully, they made an instant switch to us and basically said, let's start using EzriRx and let's double down on that. But those conversations are hard to have. But I think that the pharmacies that are having them are ultimately winning in the long run.
Back in the day when the reps would spend more time in the pharmacies from the primaries, they'd be in there for an hour and shooting the breeze and things like that. Does that still exist? I've been out of the game for a while now. Does that still exist where somebody doesn't want to hurt the feelings of their sales rep? And I know that sounds odd, but back in the day when everything was about even, I was a sucker for the good salesman, made me feel good and that kind of stuff. But I knew I was talking not a whole lot of money between the two. They were all pretty similar. Nowadays, how much success are the primary reps having with that relationship to make people feel guilty to do something? Or is it all just numbers now?
So one of the drug wholesalers that we work with told me is that when they got into the industry in the 1980s or early 90s, he said that it was relationship based. If the wholesaler didn't have a drug for 3 days, the pharmacy would wait for it. And that, just going back to our initial conversation, is that the market has changed. The market has changed from the consumer market. No consumer is waiting for a drug 3 days for it to come back in stock. And similarly, the pharmacies are not waiting either. So the conversation which the reps are usually having now is that, hey, you missed your GCR target. You missed your this target, and we're going to cut you off. So that conversation changed from, hey, how is your family doing, to we're going to have a hard conversation about your buying habits and seeing how we could fix that. And pharmacies get scared because no one wants to be cut off from a contract that they have, because they always know that they need particular drugs that only the primaries have. So we can't obviously knock the primary model. The primary models actually are there to serve the community and really there to serve the pharmacies that need particular drugs. We're just telling pharmacies is that you can't only rely on that contract. You can't rely on that primary model. You need to think smarter. You need to think different. You need to think again.
All right. So, Ezriel, you walk into this pharmacy and look at their pile of papers. What was it to you? Were you interested in that? Were you part of the world of pharmacy? Why did you even look at this and say, I can fix this?
So that's actually pretty interesting. I was a tech kid always. I started off in the business world when I was probably 17 or 18 years old, literally right out of high school. And I always loved building websites. I always loved building software where there is a niche that had to be filled, where there's had to be solved. And when I walked into the pharmacy, it was my own neighborhood pharmacist. It was a mom and pop pharmacy that was there for my family for years, actually. And I had a good relationship with him. And I was in the building websites business, and I understood, how the technology is out there, and I was always following up with different things. And I basically just asked him a simple question. And as an entrepreneur, my head started turning, and I was like, wait, what is going on here? How do we make it easier? How do we make it? And I really asked the really simple, stupid questions. I was like, what is going on here? And it wasn't because I particularly wanted to go into the pharmacy industry. It just so happened to have been is that I was playing in the medical supply field, in the diabetic tester field. I got to know pharmacies. I got to know how the wholesale business worked. And then I walked into a pharmacy and this challenge happened. And I was like, wait, if I would have been in your shoes, what would I have done differently? And how could I innovate in that regard? It's not the same way that most people get into the industry. They'll usually start off as a rep, and then they'll become a manager, and then they'll start a company, or basically work in a different field. I came from the entrepreneur's journey of how do I fill a need for a community, and especially community that is there to help people and save lives. And that just proved itself during COVID, is that I got my vaccines, I got it from a pharmacy, and I got it from a local pharmacy, because those are the people. And wanted masks, I actually got it from my own pharmacy. I wasn't in the business doing anything different. And I started realizing is that while everyone is hunkered down at home, the pharmacist putting on a mask, and they're actually there for the community. And I was like, that's why I chose that industry. That's why I chose working with the pharmacist and working with the pharmacies. And because they were the first responders, and people don't give enough credit to them. And instead, all we hear is the steady bombardment of DIR fees and negative reimbursements. And that's what keeps me up at night, is that I'm not here for myself anymore. I'm here for the thousands of pharmacies that are on EzriRx that are struggling. And the message that I get is that, hey man, just letting you know is that you just saved my pharmacy $36 in this script and $47 in this drug and $140 in this item. And that's why I'm able to service my patients tomorrow. And that's how I'm able to stay open tomorrow, is because you literally made those extra $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month because you started looking for better pricing, and you switched that model in your head. And just by us working on those little nuances and bringing a community of pharmacies together, one of the things which we did, just as a side note, is that we built something called group deals. And what group deals was is that usually when you go to a wholesaler and you try to negotiate with a wholesaler, the thing that makes the biggest difference in price is that if you take a larger quantity. And I basically said, we have 6,000 pharmacies here all buying as a collective. I'm like, why not join them all together? We'll go over directly to a wholesaler or drug manufacturer and try to get a better price for it. And no matter if one pharmacy takes 1, 6, 9, or 12, just as long as we're taking together a massive bunch of products, we should be able to move the needle. And the first product which we did was the lidocaine patches. And lidocaine patches were is like a product which pharmacies use a lot. And we literally got the price cut in half. And pharmacies did not have to commit to a massive quantity. It was the collective of pharmacies that all worked together to get the better pricing for everyone else. And when everyone worked together, it helped everyone.
Getting the nuts and bolts of that, out of curiosity, was that a promise to buy them over a certain time, or did they actually put the order in to get that bigger quantity?
They all put together within 72 hours. Everyone committed to 6 pieces, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 9 pieces, 11 pieces. All the pharmacies came together. And because the wholesalers ultimately want to push more product, and they know that they could go to the manufacturers and basically get a much better price if they get the volume. Now, the thing is that no one's willing to work on a better price for a pharmacy that just needs 2 or needs 6 or needs 12. Like one other thing which we just did, something which we built for the larger pharmacies, is that the pharmacies that have multiple locations, usually if there's a single buyer, they have to connect to a wholesaler separately and basically say, hey, I'm looking 6 pieces for this store and 6 pieces for this store. We basically just built an allocation feature that one main pharmacy could put in an offer price for multiple locations at once, join the quantity, get a higher volume, and get a better price from the wholesaler. Something which we literally launched last week. And so far, the few chain pharmacies that have been using it have been saving a lot, because instead of them just sticking to the single volume that each location has to take, they now have the collective volume. And now for wholesalers, it makes sense for them as well, because they're basically saying, well, at first, I had to price out each individual store individually. I had to now ship it in 6 different boxes. But in reality, had I known beforehand is that it was all going to the same ownership, I would have given them a better price because they're taking such large volume. And like that helped them too. So that's what we did. We basically just built it out for them, and it's been working really, really well so far. To give credit to the wholesalers that we work with, which is something which I have to be very thankful for, there is no disparaging, there is no price difference between the East Coast and West Coast. There is no price difference between larger pharmacies and smaller pharmacies. The only difference we'll make is that if you take a larger quantity from a wholesaler or not.
With my wholesaler talk, I'm referencing more the big 3 crying tears when they come into your store. My dad used to do that. We'd be at a lunch with the wholesalers, one of the big 3s, and we'd be talking to them, and we had a good relationship with them. And whenever they started talking about their thin margins, my dad would reach over and grab a napkin and pull his glasses off, like dabbing his fake tears, like he was crying for them. But I have no sympathy for those guys, and they've got the vertical integration of all the things behind the scenes, along with a PSAO that's supposed to be saving us money, when in fact I think they just want to make as many sales as they can in order to keep us in business buying stuff. They don't care about our profit as long as we're still on the corner.
It's a very harsh reality. That's all I can say. It's a very harsh reality. And that's why we constantly tell pharmacies you need to innovate. You have to think outside of the box. There are pharmacies that are thriving. There are. And those pharmacies have moved on from the traditional purchasing that they've done and that the industry has been constantly going. And what did they do? What are they doing different? Because at the end of the day, something that I saw recently is that, I'm actually going to pull it out so that I actually get the correct numbers over here, of what the lobbying efforts that happened. And just to put it into perspective, is that the lobbying spent in 2023, AHIP spent $13.6 million in 2023. CVS Health spent $11.75 million. PCMA spent $15.44 million. Cigna spent $10.42 million in lobbying in 2023. NCPA spent $1.4 million. In comparison, that's a drop in the bucket. And it's because they're Goliaths and we have to be the Davids. We just have to figure out is that you won the battle, we're going to try to win the war. And we're going to try to basically figure out how we can find profits. There is one thing which people always discount, is that what the independent pharmacy has is the relationship with the patient. They have the ability to know the patient by first name. They have the ability to know what issues. They have the ability to do a local delivery. They have they can be the shoulder to cry on for so many patients that the chains can't do. And they have the retail location, which is X amount of square feet in their area, in their neighborhood. You could try to see what different things you could do out of that location that will essentially be profitable. It's rather unfortunate what's happening with the negative reimbursements. And that's why we tell pharmacies, try to always go back to the golden nuggets.
When you realized that you thought you might take a trip down this road of helping pharmacies with your realization and your web programming and so on. Was there anybody standing in the way with threats like, you won't be able to do this because you're not this, or you're too small for this, and so on? And I'm thinking people that said that, maybe your competitors, and the information they were saying was not true. They were trying to scare you away from rising up.
That's a very unique question. And I actually wasn't planning on speaking about this, but the first year, this is going back into 2016, maybe early 2017, when we had just launched EzriRx. And I have to preface this that I did get an apology years later. One of the players in the industry came to me and he put his hand on my chest and basically says, "You're trying to fight a fight that you're never going to be able to win. And you are just a little guy and you're never going to succeed." And I basically said, that's the key difference that you don't know, is that every time you do that to me, I'm going to try to rise above it. And because if you're doing it to me, you're doing it to thousands of other pharmacies on a day-to-day basis. And this is not how the industries in general succeed. You always, being the good fighter in scenarios, being the person that's there to champion and help, will be hurtful initially, but in the long run, it's going to end up making a big difference in their lives, and they're going to champion for you instead. And that's really what happened, is that when we started, we had 0 pharmacies and 0 wholesalers, literally. And we started with 1 wholesaler and 1 pharmacy and 10 pharmacies and 20 pharmacies and then 3 wholesalers and 5 wholesalers and 7 wholesalers. People asked us, how are you getting these wholesalers? And why are pharmacies coming to you over someone else? And we basically said is that because we're here for the individual pharmacist that their pocket is burning. We're here for the wholesaler that basically says that I have the ability to get pharmacies good pricing, but they're constantly going back to their ways of just buying from their primary. And we want to fix that. And hopefully eventually we're going to work with the primaries and have them, join the good fight. And hopefully start giving pharmacies pricing that they need where it makes sense and switching away, because I don't think that the primaries necessarily are the bad people. They're being killed by the margins that they have to work with. And they're also dealing with brands that they're purchasing at very little off whack. And they still have to ship controls. They have to ship OTC, HBA, and they're dealing with generic deflation as well. The biggest enemy here is the PBM. And that's something which we always have to revert back to, that is that at the end of the day, the ones controlling the narrative are not the manufacturers, which so many consumers out there believe that the bad people in the industry are the manufacturers. It's not the manufacturer. It's not the wholesaler. It's the PBM, which is controlling and doing nothing for the industry and ultimately making the biggest pool of money that anyone has possibly ever seen.
One thing we did when we dropped our 3 major wholesalers, we had to fight like hell to find over-the-counter product, because it seemed like the major 3, it's like nobody else was in it really. And I'm thinking that maybe it's a pain in the ass and they're just doing it to keep pharmacies happy. What don't I know about the OTC industry, a bottle of Robitussin or buying a Tylenol, generic or brand name, something like that? What does that do for wholesalers? And am I correct that the big 3 do it kind of because they have to and nobody else wants to deal with it?
That's a very good question. The big 3 buy with consortiums. You have the Walgreens Boots Alliance, which is AmerisourceBergen, Boots, and Walgreens buy together. They've recently divested, but ultimately for the longest time, they negotiated with the manufacturer all together. McKesson and Walmart buy together. CVS and Cardinal buy together. So they're the ones that are negotiating directly with the drug manufacturers to be able to get better pricing. Now, the pricing is not happening on each particular molecule that they're doing. It's usually done with forecasting of how the usage is going to be. Now, for a primary to be a primary, they have to have 5 different categories of product. They have to have brands, generics, OTC, HBA, controls. They have to have those 5 categories.
To be named by the pharmacy gods that they're a major wholesaler?
I think even legally, to say that they're major, they have to always make sure is that if there's a pandemic or epidemic or something like that, that they can always get the medications needed for across the board to the pharmacies that they have to service and hospitals that they have to service.
That's interesting.
Now, when it comes to the distribution of it now, here's how they distribute. The big three go ahead and they put it onto totes. And they basically fill it up in a little tote, and you'll see that your pharmacy is sitting in a little plastic crate that they have, and they'll get the stuff there. The secondaries have an issue that they can't distribute those products. For very simple is that a shampoo is going to weigh the box too much, and they can't ship it. Say, for example, a sippy cup is not going to work in a big box when you're shipping it medications. For the big three, it's like fairly simple. They take a big crate, they put in a GLP-1, they'll put in gabapentin, they'll put in a shampoo, they'll put in a Tylenol, and they'll put in something else, and they'll send it to the customer because it's coming in a van to the pharmacy that's local to them. When you're dealing with a secondary wholesale in the market, it's too hard for them. And the margins are simply not there on those types of items.
Hard as in mainly too expensive to send that way.
Too expensive. It's bulky and it's too expensive for them. And I wouldn't even call it OTC as the problem. HBA, right? So health and beauty aids are really where the trick becomes, because you have wholesalers that like we have on the site that actually have a full line of OTCs. But then again, they have the same brand impact. So the same issue that they have when they're buying a pharmaceutical brand, when you're buying a generic brand, when you're buying an OTC brand, you have the same like price constraints that happen. Is that when you're trying to buy Tylenol, Advil, like Motrin, is that the manufacturer is going to upcharge you because they have the name and they have the ability to upcharge you. Same thing is that when the major three are buying the major brands from the major drug manufacturers, they're having the same issue. Is that they're not buying it at 50% off whack and selling it to you at 6% off whack. They're just not doing that. They have much slimmer margins than what people think. So same issue translates from the brand RX to the brand OTCs.
I'm picturing a big 4-pack of Depends or shampoo big bottles. It's just like you can't do that. And that's where, of course, Amazon is still trying. They're losing money on a ton of stuff, but to raise their market share and all that kind of stuff, because they're having the same struggles, I'm sure. It's just that they commit to it and they do it.
That's what I tell pharmacies directly. Buy it on Amazon. There is certain credit cards like the Amazon credit card, which offers you 5% cash back. And if you buy it in volume, you can even get it cheaper. And a lot of times, if you can't find it from your primary, just buy it on Amazon. It works out. You can get it cheaper than what you can get it from. And now, it all comes down to is to just don't let it affect your GCR. Buy it on Amazon.
We don't sell medical equipment anymore, but we were having that where the wholesalers probably just didn't want to deal with themselves. So we were, let's say, buying a transport chair. The wholesaler had it for $150 or something, and we'd buy it on Amazon for $109 at our retail price, and it would be cheaper than the wholesaler. So we'd get stuff like that. And typically we could practically sell it for less than we would if we would have bought it from the wholesaler.
That's the process of thinking again. It's finding those little nuggets and just doubling down on it. Finding the stuff which are not working, which should be working, which you're promised that it's going to work, and you're promised to trust the process. Don't. Just don't trust the process.
We get some of our OTC generics from this bigger generic house, and they're pretty much branded with this company. But if we run out, one of our guys has a Walmart's $10 a month, something or other. And so we'll call up Walmart and get 6 ointments or something, and Walmart will deliver it to us like in a couple hours, from the store in town. So you got to do what you got to do.
Yes, you definitely got to do what you got to do. You got to figure out how to be innovative. In like times when the struggle gets hard, you have to figure out like how to innovate. And the pharmacies that have been using EzriRx have been even acknowledging the fact is that, like, where were you the last 5 years? That's like the common question which we always get is that why haven't we heard of you before? And we'll tell them is that because every time we called you, you just slammed down the phone. And I was like, I actually get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And they're like, we thought that you were a wholesaler. And I was like, we're not a wholesaler. We're here to help pharmacies. And that's one of the reasons why I try to come onto these podcasts, even though I'm not the best podcaster. And I have a hard time just passing on my thoughts. But it's so many pharmacies don't know what EzriRx is. They think that we're just a regular marketplace, or they think we're a drug wholesaler. They think we're a manufacturer. We are none of that. We're a technology-driven, pharmacy-first marketplace platform that's not here just to save you on your cost of goods. We're here to save you on your time, which will result in significant profit, which you'll end up making, and it's going to take you away from surviving to thriving.
What other things have you already mentioned? Some things that didn't work in getting the word out. What kind of things help in getting the word out in terms of whether it's phone, whether it's weekend conventions, whether it's the list goes on and on. What things do you guys do? What does work?
The thing that has so far been the results driven is that when we took a look at the numbers, it was proven is that pharmacies referring other pharmacies result in the highest amount of purchases. So not necessarily just a sign up that doesn't buy. It's the pharmacies that buy heard from other pharmacies that have been saving. And it's been very unique in that nature is that to get a pharmacy to change their methods and processes is fairly difficult. Pharmacies are hung up on the issues that they have, and it's very understandable. It's very understandable is that they have struggles that they have to constantly deal with. They have to deal with inventory reconciliations. They have to deal with just making sure that they get their checks in time. They have to deal with refills. They have to deal with calling patients, dealing with patients, and sitting on the phones with them. For some reason, word of mouth is helping us more than any conference that we go to. And it's been really cool to see is that the pharmacies that join EzriRx become become a family instead of being just another user. We have a WhatsApp group and we have a Telegram group where a lot of pharmacies, they use us constantly communicate on, and we answer a lot of good questions that it's not just a pharmacy in New York area that is dealing with a pharmacy in California. Lots of the stuff that work for pharmacy in New York could work for pharmacy in California. A lot of stuff that work for pharmacy in California won't necessarily work in New York, but it's going to work in New Jersey and it's going to work in Texas. And the social camaraderie that they have between themselves is really great and something which has helped us in our growth.
How could someone do something better than you at this point? In your wildest dreams, what could put you in a lower position than another company?
I usually try to mirror two different people. I try to think of how Elon Musk would think of certain things is that he'll just open source it. If it's a good thing for the world and it's a good thing for the pharmacy business, I don't care if someone does it better. You're dealing with thousands of pharmacists that have families and kids and want to earn and strive. And okay, if someone does it better, then by all means. Then I'll move on to the second thing. Okay, what are we doing wrong? It's very easy for you to be BlackBerry and be so hung up on the keyboard that you're not innovating as fast as Apple will build the iPhone, right? And you could be Craigslist and not be as innovative as Amazon, really taking that entire process and just taking it further. And then we constantly have to take a hard look at ourselves and say, okay, what can we do better? What can we make easier for the pharmacists? And why is that person beating us at the game? And A, congrats to them. And B, what steps do we have to take in order to make this process easier and better for pharmacies so that we can continue winning? It is never about, oh, someone's doing it better than us, and therefore we have to lick our wounds and we just buckle down. We just push the pedal to the metal and say, okay, let's basically figure out what they did, because that's what we did in the general industry. We basically took, what does Amazon have? What does eBay have? What does Groupon have? What stuff are out there in the general industry? And we brought it into the pharmacy world. So when someone does something better than us, good for them.
Let's do it.
We're going to learn what you're doing and let's do it better. Let's just 10x it. Let's basically make it that much better. And let's build a moat around what we have so that we could be light years ahead. And unfortunately, when we started, we had a lot more ideas of what we wanted to do, but we were held back by the industry constraints. We built our site initially being completely API based because that's where we thought the industry was. And then we realized that everyone is EDI based, and we had to really teach ourselves legacy code in order to bring us. It was backwards.
What technology is going to latch on? Obviously, there's a bunch of things that Apple came out with, then Newton and all that didn't catch on. One thing I notice is we have Google TV, and I know they're all like this probably, but Google now, you press the button and you talk into it. I want a show on such and such. I'm lost when that thing breaks. And I don't do a whole lot of voice stuff. I voice type. I do some voice stuff on my phone, but I can just as easily put my thumb on a couple things. But when that Google voice, when my voice, I can't press a button and talk into my TV at night, and I got to pull up the square diagram and do it with my thumb. The kids can do that fast, but I'm lost on that. That's just an example of something that you don't know what's going to catch on. It might have been one of 100 ideas, but things move on and you got to do it. And some are failures and some catch on, some don't, and so on.
There are so many things which we did thinking is that this is going to be the no-brainer. This is what pharmacies are going to use, and it just doesn't work. But that's how business works. You could bring in, go to any trade show and you see that there are thousands and thousands of new products. If you're not fast in the innovation space and just move and break things. Move and break things and move things. And then the stuff that work, you set up a team, dedicate yourself to that and build it and grow it. And stuff that don't work, just move on from that and just forget how painful it was to build and just join the team that's working on something that does work until we come up with a new project for you to focus on. We've thankfully, I think that the biggest hurdle for us is educating pharmacies on the new stuff which we come out with, because we're so feature rich that a lot of pharmacies are so used to just, oh, okay, I'm getting the best price, move on.
My wife always says I'm too cynical, but I think by nature of the pharmacist, where the tech, Elon Musk, they clap when their rocket explodes because they know they're one step closer. Pharmacists, I guess by nature of our job, and rightfully so, a lot of times we're focused on the negative. As long as something is not negative, as long as it's not an error, or as long as somebody didn't write something wrong, it's a success. So we have a natural repulsion of negativeness, of failure, where, companies like yourself are the opposite of that.
I would never blame a pharmacist. I really would never blame a pharmacist. Just imagine every morning you wake up and you get a smack.
Yeah.
That's how you wake up. So you can't blame a pharmacist for going through that mindset. I think that we try to do the best job we can in order to make their life simpler. And in the hopes that if there's ever a day that they can look back and say, here's how much we saved using this system. Here's how much it has made our life better. Here's how simple. And we're thankful for the person that actually did that. It's worth it for us. Something that I always tell my team. If you don't hear from a pharmacy, you did a good job.
Golly, Ezriel, that was fun to learn about that stuff. I think you put it best early on when you said the quote from Henry Ford about people want faster horses. So thank you for taking the lead on that for the profession in those areas. And a pleasure talking to you. And I look forward to seeing what you guys continue to do.
Thank you for inviting me onto the show. It's been a real pleasure. I didn't think the conversation was going to go into so many interesting places, but it's been such a pleasure. It really has been. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Kelzer. Please subscribe for all future episodes.